Thanks for joining me. So again, I'm Kim Hance from the Herzog Law Firm and a geriatric care manager that will be presenting today how to identify and stop some of the most common financial scams and tricks that are out there. So one of the things that we know is that more and more people are being taken advantage of from the financial abuse industry, and financial scams are targeting seniors. And really it's become so prevalent that they're now really considered sort of the crime of the 21st century. And I think one of the biggest reasons is seniors are thought to, have a significant amount of money sitting in their accounts. Our seniors are more stable and established now as we get older. Financial scams often, go unreported and can be difficult to prosecute. So they're unfortunately considered a low risk crime. However, that doesn't change how devastating they are to many older adults and can really leave folks very vulnerable and in an unrecoverable position. So it's not just seniors who can be a target of financial exploitation. It can really be anybody. But elder financial exploitation crosses all social, educational, and economic boundaries. One of the things that we do know as well is if you lose your money in your older years, there are really fewer options to be able to earn new funds of what was lost. When you look at these statistics, they're a little scary, but individuals that are 60 and older represent about 20% of the United States population. And that percentage is only increasing over the next few decades. One of the statistics now is we have over 10,000 folks turning 65 every day between now and 2030. Also, individuals that are age 65 or 85 and older, that's the fastest growing population group there is now. And they're also, unfortunately, the highest risk of abuse. Older adults control the majority of the personal wealth in our country. And both professional con artists and seniors' own family members are aware of this wealth. And they're also aware of the vulnerabilities that our seniors may face. Low-income older adults are also at risk of financial abuse. It's not just wealthy who are targeted. So let's talk about some of the reasons that increase our risk as we get older. One of the biggest concerns we have as we get older are some of the fears and, the frailties of the aging and perhaps our dependence on others. I'm curious if anyone in the group, just think to yourself, has, feared that your funds are going to run out as you get older in age. There's an extremely common worry among seniors, as some of these other factors that are listed, that over 30% of seniors state that they would rather die than go into a nursing home. And I would say that that percentage, that statistic is much higher, because it's almost 100% of the seniors that I talk to and work with that say they would much rather die at home than in a nursing home. Isolation is also one of the biggest risk factors, and it really can't be overstated. Most family violence only occurs behind closed doors, and the elder abuse really is no exception. Some older people self-isolate by withdrawing from the larger community. Others are isolated because they lose the ability to drive. They can't see as well any longer. Their physical ability isn't as good as it once was. Some seniors fear being victimized by being out and by having their purse snatched or by being mugged. So there are a lot of things that kind of contribute to the risk of our folks being targeted. Seniors are often targeted too because they tend to be more trusting and more polite. We've already talked about there's financial savings, they own a home, they have good credit, all of which make folks attractive to scammers. Additionally, seniors might be less inclined, unfortunately, to report fraud because they don't know how, or maybe they're ashamed that they were scammed. Might also be concerned that their relatives will lose confidence that they have the ability to manage their own financial affairs. And perhaps that leads to being able to live independently. And when an elderly victim does report a crime, they might, due to physical issues, memory issues, really be unable to supply the detailed information that's needed to investigators to be able to really thoroughly investigate that crime. So unfortunately, when we look at who the perpetrators usually are of these circumstances, I mean, yes, they are strangers, and we're going to talk about some of the most popular and common scams that are out there, but they can also be family members who are taking care of a loved one. It can also be maybe a hired caregiver, family, informal, anyone who really uses fear to kind of take advantage of someone. Again, when we talk about financial abuses being committed by both strangers and through, common denominators and people that they know, most cases it's, can be through fraudulent financial institution, con artists, those types of things. Unfortunately, one of the worst statistics that we have is that over 90% of all of the reported elder abuse is really committed by somebody that the individual knows. Most often it's adult children, followed by grandchildren, nieces, nephews, and then other extending family. And, common tactics in this can be depleting a checking account, promising but not delivering in exchange, care for an exchange of money or property. There could be outright theft. Other forms include, physical abuse, threats, intimidation, and really the neglect of basic needs in some of the worst cases that I've personally dealt with. So I want to talk to you about some of the top 9 scams that are out there, just to give you an idea of things to watch out for. And I'm sure that you've heard of some of these. And criminals do use a variety of methods to deceive victims. Romance, sweepstakes, charity, technology support, grandparent lottery, government impersonation schemes. These are all things that are trusting entities that allow for a platform to be able to scam somebody. I want to pull out a couple of these and talk specifically about them. So, when we talk about a tech support scam, the perpetrator really poses as a technology support representative and offers to fix a non-existent computer issue. A lot of times, they do it by gaining remote access to the victim's devices, and then they're able to put in some type of virus or phishing type of installation that allows them to take over and control the computer. And one of the other very popular tech ways is you click on a pop-up that comes up. It looks like an advertisement for something. Suddenly this loud alarm goes off, says that your computer's frozen, and unless you pay, a certain amount of money, they're going to infect your computer. Generally speaking, if that happens, what we tell people is to immediately shut your computer down and call a reputable computer repair service. Best Buy has their Geek Squad. You may have some kind of professional computer organization you work with. But the important thing is never, ever give somebody money to unlock your computer, because it will be bad. One of, honestly, what I consider to be the most despicable scams out there is people who prey on obituary listings. And these obituary swindles, also known as bereavement scams, really start with information that's just taken from the death notice that's placed in a newspaper, or one that can be posted online. They harvest facts from that are commonly included in our obituaries, the deceased birth date, where the person lived and worked, family members' names. They start building a profile that really can, help them with this identity theft. And with really just a few key details, cyber crooks can really locate and purchase the dead person's home address, their social security number, and really other personal data that's on the dark web. They use that information to access or create fraudulent financial accounts, take out loans, obtain some kind of healthcare insurance, maybe file phony tax returns, and claim bogus refunds under the deceased's name. It's all sort of a form of what we call ID, dubbed ghosting. The other way somebody through an obituary scam, they'll target a surviving spouse or maybe some other family member. Con artists really, they can pose as government officials, debt collectors, insurance agents, and they'll try to pry loose more personal data about the deceased, or maybe solicit a payment of some sort for a supposedly unpaid bill, maybe an unclaimed benefit, or some kind of lapsed policy. And this is literally somebody showing up to the doorstep and saying, I'm from XYZ insurance company. We understand if Mr. Jones passed away, he had an unpaid premium, and unless you catch the premium up to date, you're not going to get his life insurance death benefit. When indeed there may have never been a life insurance policy held, but they have enough information that they can kind of convince the individual that this is something that they need to do. The TV radio scam is, folks are targeted under illegitimate advertisements about legitimate services, such as things like reverse mortgages, credit repair, that type of thing. Family caregiver scam perpetrators really are relatives or maybe even acquaintances of the elderly, and take advantage of them otherwise to be able to get their money. I'll mow your lawn, I'll, provide home care services, those types of things. And then they either never do them or they only do them a little bit overcharge and then continue to do that on a regular basis. So some of these we're going to go into further detail just ahead, but I want to first give you talk about some health insurance fraud. And, healthcare fraud occurs when an individual, a group of people, or maybe a company knowingly misrepresents or misstates something about the type or the scope or really the nature of the medical treatment or the service that's being provided in a manner that really would allow them to result in an unauthorized payment being made. Everyone will get a copy of these slides, so don't feel like you need to really write all of these notes down. You guys will get a copy of these. But this really gives you some great tips for being able to avoid health insurance fraud. Another big thing that we're seeing more and more of is Medicare scams. And they might call and pretend to be a Medicare representative or an agent. And this is really an attempt to steal your Medicare number or maybe some other personal information. They can use a fake caller ID to name and impersonate Medicare or some other kind of Medicare related organization. So really don't trust the name that is displayed on your phone ID screen. If anyone calls and asks for your Medicare, your Social Security, bank or credit card information, please just immediately hang up. A scammer really can use your personal information to file false claims, sign in to your Medicare plan, maybe sign you up for a plan you didn't agree to, or even steal your identity altogether. There are a couple of wonderful organizations. Senior Medicare Patrol is a program through the Administration on Aging. And this program is offered in every state. And they really work hard to educate seniors and help avoid instances of fraud. You can find out about Senior Medicare Patrol by simply going to the website, and you can click on Find My State, and it will list all of the local organizations that can help file and help understand some of the Medicare scams that are going on, and if you've become a victim, how you can remedy that. I think telemarketing scams are one of the things that we most commonly know about, but unfortunately, it's really difficult to get your money back if you've been cheated over the telephone. Most calls are untraceable. Most places close up shop very quickly and reopen under a different organization or a different name. They call from all over the world. So really folks cannot be found out why or how, who it was that they gave information to. These are some great tips on how to avoid telemarketing scams. You know, in general, get as much information as you always can. And you really, as the consumer, should be the one reaching out and calling an individual for something to sell, not answering the phone and saying, oh yeah, that sounds like a great option for me. I think I'd like to buy that. Long gone are the door-to-door vacuum cleaner salesmen that once upon a time happened. Another really popular and an unfortunate scam we hear so much about these days are the home repair scam. And really the perpetrator appears in person and charges a homeowner in advance for a home and improvement service that they never provide. Some tips that we say really is so important is you really want to make sure you get more than one bid for the job. You want to insist that the contract be in writing and that it has a full and complete scope of the work that's going to be performed. Never, ever pay a contractor before you read and sign a contract, not even as a down payment. The other key is you really don't want to pay a contractor for more than 1/3 of the contract price to begin the work. I mean, making a down payment and helping to pay for some of the supplies is normal and typical practice, but never want to pay for more than that. And want to make sure that the contract really includes the name, the address, phone number of the contractor. You want to make sure you have a license number for the contractor and it's actually their business, not someone else posing as them. Check for complaints with the Better Business Bureau. Again, you know, never make a final payment until you are completely satisfied with the work. One of the other things we really encourage folks to do is get references, speak to those references and ask to drive by and see some of the work that they've actually performed and verify that by talking to the homeowner that they've done the work for. So lots of ways that we have to think about protecting ourselves, which is unfortunate, but it's really important to follow through on those things. So lottery scammers are one of the largest scams out there and most common. Lottery scammers will claim that you are among the winners of a lottery and that you can receive your money for a small advance fee. Just pay us $19.99 and we will send your check to you. One thing that we always stress is you never pay money to get money. And really that's a saying we hear, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. You know, in this type of scam, these scammer might also ask you to provide personal information. You know, they're told they need to pay fees for shipping. So just give us your credit card number. Better yet, give us your bank account and we'll make a direct deposit. You know, they also look for ways to get money by saying that there are expenses for wiring money, you know, sending a personal check. They may ask you to provide some credit card information. So these are all ways that scammers take advantage during a sweepstakes or supposed lottery. You know, it's sad to think that this is a thing, but this is becoming a more and more popular scam out there. Romance scammers typically send a romantic message to people that they don't know, often pretending to be divorced, maybe widowed, in a bad marriage. You know, they'll engage in an online relationship in hopes of receiving money for flights or for a visa of some sort. You know, I'm trapped in this country, I can't get out, I am in an abusive relationship, I need to leave. You know, their goal really is to gain the trust of the individual they're forming a relationship with. The conversations sometimes go weeks, months, and even years maybe before money is asked for. In 2015, there were about $33 million in losses to romance compared to 2019, 201 million, a huge jump there. You know, we've seen a 40% increase over the last several years, specifically due to the pandemic because of isolation and people being more lonely. So folks have turned to their computer more and are using different kinds of social apps to reach out and have friends. So we really do have to be careful. Some of the big exclamation points we say to look for are to ask questions. You know, tell me about yourself, tell me, you know, about your family. And you want to look for inconsistent answers. Also, in a lot of situations, circumstances, you'll see spelling errors in this, because if you're dealing with somebody whose English is not their first language, they actually might not know how to use the spell everything correctly. So those are some inconsistencies that can really be helpful if you find yourself in this type of circumstance. I'm sure a lot of us have heard about the grandparent scam, but believe it or not, it is still very prevalent. You know, scammers can then access, you know, consumers' personal information by social media, maybe purchasing data from cyber thieves, and they sort of create a storyline to create, you know, to prey on the fears of grandparents. I mean, we've all been teenagers once. We all understand the trouble we can get in as teenagers. And, you know, grandparents are a lifeline a lot of times for troubled teenagers. So we want to really make sure that you know who it is that you're talking to. Just recently, the FBI in Buffalo, New York, had a caller contact an elderly person in Western New York, claimed to be a grandchild who had just been in a serious car accident and arrested for drunk driving. The imposter pressed the grandparent for money to post bond and then passed the phone to someone else who claimed to be that person's attorney. That phony attorney told the grandparent to come up with approximately $15,000 in cash and put it in an envelope to be picked up at their house by a courier at a designated time. When the courier arrived, the unsuspecting grandparent handed over the cash. Unfortunately, the FBI reports that this kind of scam can use rideshare companies to retrieve money, can you know, use all sorts of different types of avenues. Really, the best advice for avoiding this type of scam or any kind of suspicious phone call is to hang up immediately. And if you really do suspect that it's your grandchild or someone you know that needs help, call them back on the number that you usually call them on. You know, never accept a phone call from a number that you're unsure of. You know, one of the things too to keep on a lookout that probably highlights it as a scam is, you know, if you feel like you're being pressured for information or to send the money quickly. You know, scammers often try to bully victims into transferring money through a mobile payment app, maybe through wiring money, maybe by purchasing gift cards or money orders. So if you receive a call like this, it really is, you know, important to report it immediately to your local law enforcement as well. Another one that you may have heard about, but you don't really think of it so much as being like a big time scam, but is a huge moneymaker, are these free vacations. You know, you receive a notification via the mailbox, you know, call immediately. Only the first 300, you know, callers taken. You know, they'll say you're the lucky winner of an absolutely free vacation stay. You know, so you eagerly start planning your trip only to find out that you're constantly asked to pay various prize fees, maybe taxes, reservation deposits. And as the departure date draws closer, you realize that maybe your free vacation really isn't free at all. You might still get a vacation, but with all of the fees that you've paid prior to leaving, you realize you've invested a pretty big chunk of change. You know, the other one to look out for is a lot of people more and more are using Airbnb, searching for that perfect vacation rental house to house all of your family members. And then you suddenly strike gold. There it is. It's the rental you've been looking for. And wow, what a great price. So you contact the renter and you begin to make arrangements for your trip. You know, the renters sometimes might offer you a steeper discount if you pay them through a third-party processing site instead of the actual Airbnb website. You know, their likely preference is a wire transfer. You'll then be asked to pay a deposit or maybe even the full price of the rental before you arrive. While it's completely expected to pay upfront through Airbnb or another rental service, you're not going to have the same protection if you were not using the site. A lot of times we hear that a renter will say, I don't want to pay Airbnb fees. I don't want to make you pay the service fees. You can just pay me offline through my Venmo account or through my PayPal account. Don't do that because you will not be protected at all if it ends up being fraudulent. So a lot of times in a circumstances like this, the problem really begins when you arrive to your vacation spot, or, you know, what you try to do, that is, the address you've been given really does not actually exist. And the beautiful pictures that you've seen and that you've been looking through belong to someone else. Sadly, now you're out of money and you have nowhere to stay during your vacation. You know, aside from the vacation rentals, sites like Airbnb also allow you to book, you know, experiences or days out on the town with the locals. So it's good to use those platforms. Sometimes, unfortunately, the platform really has become a breeding ground for scammers who offer phony tours to, you know, people who are coming to an area that don't know anything about it. You might find yourself booking a tour or an experience and you maybe even paying for it only to find out that you've been scammed. You know, the gorgeous yacht that's going to take you out on an all-day fishing trip ends up being a two-person dinghy sort of thing. Travel companies work very hard to, you know, persuade you and join their travel club, you know, with the promise of significant benefits and kickbacks, including dream vacation stays, discounted cruises, or resort tickets and completely free getaways. You know, unfortunately, once you've joined the club, you'll be charged high dues for perks that are so hard to access, they're practically worthless. The discounted tickets will only be eligible for certain vacation dates. And of course, they're always the dates that you're not visiting. And that free trip you were promised also comes with pretty significant and severe restrictions. Recently, I've been working with a couple families that have fallen prey to different timeshare swindles. And we also have an individual who bought a vacation share in Mexico for $50,000, only to find out that it was really a resort that had nothing. That $50,000 was completely lost. So really want to be very, very careful on that you're using reputable places. So these are some of the other tips to look out for when looking at a vacation rental or some other type of stay. Again, you'll get a copy of these slides, so you don't need to worry about these specifically. One thing we're seeing more and more happen as individuals are, as we get older, we're aging well, and sometimes at 65, we're not ready to retire. So scammers will advertise jobs really kind of the same way a legitimate employer will, you know, online, in ads on job sites, maybe social media, newspapers, you know, sometimes even TV and radio. They promise you a job, but really what they want is your money and your personal information. So you really want to be careful about answering an ad or answering an online employment scam. Some of the other popular scams, I actually would become victim to an Amazon scam twice a week if I answered the text messages and the emails that I get. And these Amazon scams really could cost you thousands, and they've skyrocketed by 500% just in the last year. As Amazon security improves, so does the sophistication of the scammers. But here's some red flags that really can help you spot them. So the latest scheme involves an official looking email from Amazon being sent out to customers, excuse me, of fake receipts or shipping confirmations for an order maybe that you never placed. Users then click on the link and find out more about their supposed order, making you believe you have to update your account details. So a similar trick notifies users there is a problem with your Amazon account or the payment method used, again, tricking you into resubmitting your personal information to try to fix the issue. But innocently calling the helpline or clicking on the link that's embedded in the email that's sent to you, you really think that it's legitimate and that it's real. So one of the best ways we say is you should go, if you get an email like that, or if you get a text, log into your Amazon account directly. Never click on a link through an email or a text message that you might receive, because generally that's going to click you through to a scam site. Facebook is a wonderful way to reconnect with family, friends, see grandkids and all of the activities that they're doing. But scams on Facebook happen really by people creating fake accounts, or maybe they hack someone else that you know and they send a link. You unknowingly click on that link because you think it's from a trusted friend or family member. And it will compromise your account to really trick you into giving money or maybe giving some personal information. One of the other more popular ways on Facebook too are these quizzes. We don't really think about it. I mean, how fun is it to see how much you really like pumpkin, or how, do you like baby animals, or what's your queen name, or things like that. But really, you're giving scammers a great insight to some of your personal information, including your date of birth, maybe some of the other information that they wouldn't normally have access to. So just kind of steer clear of what's your color in the rainbow quizzes, and leave that just to not be scammed. And of course, we can't talk about scams unless we talk about the last 2.5 years and the coronavirus. Unfortunately, these numbers are even more now than they were at the time that I did this slide about 6 months ago. We now have about $25 million lost in coronavirus scans. And now, if you put in the word coronavirus in the Google search, there are actually more than 60,000 domain names that use the word coronavirus. So how do you know which one is legitimate and which one is real? And of course, with coronavirus, there's all of these claims, everything from chiropractic adjustments to exercise sessions, nasal mists, rinses, vitamins, supplements, extracts. There's a slew of known therapies that have impressive names like peptide, oxidative, stem cell, ozone, intravenous vitamin, infrared sauna therapy. All of these products, lure us into something that sounds legitimate and real. So really want to kind of stay away from anything that claims to cure coronavirus. If you get it, make it better. Best thing to do is speak with your physician. They're going to be the ones that can actually give you the best, most updated information that's available. There is actually another way that people have scammed, because there was a government relief program that used to pay up to $9,000 for funeral expenses. That were for loved ones who died from COVID-19, and survivors can apply for that through the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Again, it kind of goes back to that obituary scam where folks are, looking for different information. And if it's listed that that person was a World War II veteran or died from COVID or, maybe served in the Vietnam War, there are different pensions and compensations out there that somebody might be eligible for. So again, you want to make sure that you're contacting the entity individually, not them reaching out to you and contacting you. So there are lots of ways that our identity can be stolen, from businesses and other institutions, just accessing on-the-job records or information, dumpster diving, maybe shimming devices on the dark web. From your home mail, there could be a theft, residential burglary of dumpster diving, people going through your garbage, looking at the pre-approved credit cards, maybe a lot of times we throw away those explanation of benefits that we get in the mail through our health insurance. These are all things that you want to make sure that are shredded. A lot of times banks will send your new updated ATM card through the mail. Sometimes you may not get it, or somebody confiscates that and then tries to log on and clean your bank account out. So there are lots of ways that you really want to be very careful. I want to talk a little bit about the dark web, also kind of referred to as the dark net. It's a part of the deep web that was really accessible only to those who use a specialized software that's called Tor, and it stands for the Onion Router. Ironically, this software was actually developed by the US Navy in the 90s and is a way to allow intelligence agents operating overseas to communicate sort of anonymously with their colleagues here in the US. It was then released as a free open software to the public in the early 2000s. It got its name because all of the transmissions through it are anonymous. Messages are sent in to multiple servers around the world to disguise the sender. So it really is a way for folks to maintain anonymity that are looking to, steal other people's identity. They search for information. It takes several seconds to load. And because your request travels tens of thousands of miles between all of those servers before coming back to you, it's perfect for, dissidents, journalists, spies, and as it turns out, criminals. It's free and it's really available to anyone who wishes to download the appropriate software onto their computer. So it's really a way for folks to be able to be out there and be unidentified. And criminals really have flocked to the dark web because it allows the buying and selling of illicit goods with being completely anonymous. The browser that's used with this Tor software hides users' IP addresses, and the transactions are usually conducted in something that's called cryptocurrency, which is like Bitcoin, to make it untraceable. So really savvy, really sophisticated, and really hard to be able to recoup anything that might be exchanged through a dark web account. So some ways that we can protect ourselves, maybe our family members. Really the most common motivation for identity theft is really ultimately to gain access to banking or other accounts, lines of credit, other financial resources. So these are some great ways to be able to help kind of protect the folks that we're looking out for and taking care of. One of the ways to help prevent some of the identity theft is by permanently blocking out addresses, account numbers, so junk mail should be shredded, not recycled. Encrypted pattern in combination with oil-based ink are ways to be able to help eliminate ways that somebody can steal your identity. So lots of different tools that we can use. Phishing is also a type of online scam, and I mean PHISHING, not phishing as in fish, but it's a way that consumers are targeted by, you get sent an email that appears to be from a well-known source, again, like Amazon, you know, an internet service provider, Spectrum, you know, maybe a bank or mortgage company, for example. Then the scammer will use the information to open new accounts, maybe invade the consumer's existing accounts by the phishing software that they have. So just be very, very careful with any information that reaches out to you. So again, some other ways to protect yourself. You can sign up for do not call lists. There are different robocall lists. Medicare.gov is a great website. You can sign up for the Medicare fraud alert. Always share experiences with people, report suspicious activity. So lots of ways to be able to protect yourself from fraud. Again, super important not to be embarrassed. You know, if anyone is a victim of financial fraud, really should immediately report it to the police. File a police report really allows them to freeze your credit history at no cost. Every state operates an adult protective services program, which really is receiving for investigating reports of elder abuse, neglect, exploitation, and in most states, the abuse of younger adults with some kind of severe disability. So really, adult protective is sort of the 911 for elder abuse. So anyone who suspects any of this should contact Adult Protective Services in addition to their local police department. One of the other things that we say is really good to do is make sure you form relationships with your banker or the people who you really do financial business with, so that if something seems a little off to them, they have someone that they can alert or they can reach out to you. Having those relationships are so super important. I've listed here some of the resources that are available that you can utilize. The annual credit report actually gives you access to your credit report at no charge. You can also do a credit check on each of the different organizations like Experian, TransUnion, and the other one is escaping me at the moment. I apologize. Again, the Do Not Call website. I mentioned the AARP Fraud Watch. The New York State Attorney General's office is one of the best places to look, particularly for recent and local scams that may be going on. Recently, we had here in the Glens Falls, Saratoga area, where folks were being called from the police department requesting, soliciting donations because there was an injured, I believe an injured officer on duty. So of course, preying on the sympathy of others. Adult Protective we talked about. The Federal Trade Commission is also a wonderful resource for fraud and learning what the most recent scams are out there and then how to report some of those scams. You can also sign up for consumer alerts. I actually get probably 4 or 5 emails a week alerting me to some new scam. So I was going to open it up to questions if anybody's got a question or wants to know anything specifically. I'm going to try to unmute you guys. And if not, you can put it in the chat. Everybody should be unmuted at this point. Not seeing anything yet. Okay. Well, if there are no questions, I don't see anything in the chat at the moment. Oh, Barbara has a question. Barbara, I'm trying to unmute you. I apologize. It should say that you have the ability to unmute yourself.
Oops. Let's see.
I think I hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Great. You mentioned that people who are looking to steal your identity or participate in some kind of financial scam against you can get information through the mailings that you get for pre-approved credit cards. I get many of those and I never think about shredding them. What can I do with that information? It's just very generic.
That information is generic, but still your address and sometimes other information is enclosed on that. So I generally say anything that has any of that is just better, to shred it. Or a lot of times you'll see that they have the community shredding days and you can just bring it to that if you don't have a personal shredder. But a lot of times it's great just to invest in one of those shredders just so that everything can kind of be placed into that.
I was just wondering what kind of information can they get from that? Because when I get those, they just have my name. That's it.
Well, sometimes your name and address is enough to give somebody a starting point.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else have some questions?
You mentioned we're going to get a copy of some of the slides. Is that going to come by email?
It will come via email that you signed up for the webinar. Okay. And it will come in the next, you should get them by the middle of the week. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody joining us today. And obviously, if you have any issues or concerns, always feel free to reach out to us. And I really appreciate you taking time of this beautiful afternoon. Oh.
Kim, this is Sharon Milzoff from Wilton. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Great to hear all this wonderful information. I did send a couple of questions in the chat.
Oh, I see. Yep. Sorry about that.
GoFundMe, crypto, and when we should be reaching out to the law firm.
Well, anytime you feel like, obviously we can try to help write letters and things like that. But what I say to folks, like generally speaking, you're going to want to involve the police, or like I said, depending on what kind of scam it is, whether the Federal Trade Commission, the New York State Attorney General's office, they have an advocate that's set aside just for these types of things. So that's generally the resource that we point to when we're working with somebody for that. I would say with the GoFundMe scans, again, those are very popular and really only donate to somebody that you personally know. And I would say if you can avoid doing something through like a GoFundMe and maybe they have a bank account set up separately for that individual, that's a great way to go. Or, the individual personally. It's hard because of course we want to help people out, right? And it's hard to feel like you've got to be skeptical of everything, but it's more about protecting yourself than it is about being skeptical. So. And crypto, unfortunately, I'm not an expert on that one. So the crypto one, I can't really answer so much. And then you had a question here that says, what type of insurance would you recommend? What specifically were you thinking about as when you were talking about insurance?
Well, just protection in the event that somebody does steal your identity. Should we be getting supplemental insurance instead of just credit freezes?
I don't know that there's really supplemental insurance that helps with that. I mean, obviously, your homeowners might help with some things, but they're not going to help with, a targeted financial identity, things like that. Usually what I say, protection and prevention is the best proactive sort of cure that we can take here. And really just checking things out thoroughly.
And are credit freezes efficacious?
Say that one more time, or credit freezes.
What's the efficacy of credit freezes? Do they work?
Well, they work as long as you get it before the damage is done, right? So you want to make sure it's one of those things that happens very quickly. So if you feel like you may be a suspect of identity theft or fraud or a target of a scam, you want to let people know immediately, as opposed to kind of waiting a few weeks. I mean, days sometimes can make all of the difference. These folks work very fast. Anything else? Well, again, thank you guys. It's you know, still some of the time for the beautiful day to be had. I hope you guys enjoy the sun and enjoy the rest of the afternoon. And just a reminder, we have webinars every day this week going on at 2 o'clock. So you can head to our website, www.herzoglaw.com, and see what other webinars we're offering this week, and sign up. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great afternoon.